Welcome in. I'm really excited to be joined today by one of my favorite players to watch, somebody that everyone should be excited about, obviously, for the upcoming college season, but also the upcoming WNBA draft. This is starting off a new series that we're going to be doing with, all of the players around the country that you need to know about before, somehow it's going to be 2025. But Sonia Citron, how are you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm good. It is I was looking at my calendar today. I'm like, it's August 15th. I've
Mhm.
been emailing like an insane amount of people to set things up for like the next
Mhm.
month. And they're all like, yeah, well, school starts up, so like I'll get back to you. And we're like, school starts up. Man, that's kind of wild. So how are you feeling with that? You're gonna be a senior this year, which feels kind of wild to say. How is that like set in for you yet?
Yeah, honestly, not really. I still remember when I was a freshman, and the fact that I'm going into my senior year is just absolutely crazy. I don't know, the time just goes by so fast. So I don't know how I got here, but um we're here, so I'm ready to make the most of it and just have a great last year. So
No, absolutely. You guys made quite a few changes coming into this next year, had a lot of momentum to build off of as well. For you personally, what has been, kind of your work and focus? I know you typically work with a skills trainer back in New York. So what's your summer been like? What are the things you're kind of looking to improve on heading into this year?
yeah. I mean, one thing is just taking care of my body. I've really put a lot of focus into that, just making sure I'm feeling good because I know ultimately that's like one of the most important things because this season is long and it's definitely hard on your body. So just making sure that my body is ready to handle the season and just be in the best shape that I can be. So I've been working hard, just lifting every day, doing mobility, all that stuff, and then obviously the basketball part, just trying to fine tune everything so that I mean, ultimately, I just want to be the best player I can be to help my team. So I'm just trying to honestly be the best I can be. So just working on everything, honestly.
No, absolutely. Especially with doing mobility stuff. Is this like the first year you've really gotten into that, or when did you get started
Not
with that?
yeah, not definitely not the first year. My trainer here, his name is Brian Harrington, and he's always done a fabulous job at just not just focusing on heavy lifting and stuff like that. Like he really takes the time with his athletes to focus on the really important stuff like mobility and that stuff. So I'd say I've been doing it for the past couple of years, but I definitely focus on it a lot during the summer. So because
Yeah.
that's like when I have the most time to do stuff like that. So
No, for sure. It's interesting. I'm a little bit older than you, so I feel like every time like to me, like doing the lift, that's easy. But it's
yeah,
like doing the, when it's like 4:35, I'm like probably stretch, like do a little bit of yoga. It's like, you never really want to do it, but
yeah,
I also think
no,
that's the thing that kind of can really separate you when you're exactly what you're talking about, like
for
being
sure.
ready in season and
Yes,
handling
little
that.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to transition from there too, because obviously, unfortunately dealt with an injury for the early part of the season and came back and really found your stride. But I know this is like it was like the first injury that you've really ever dealt with in your career. So what was that like for you? How did you how did you handle that? And obviously you were able to really make a huge impact when you
Mhm.
came back and found your stride. But what was that like for you kind of figuring that out and dealing with that day to day?
Yeah, it was definitely very, very hard. I would say it's one of the hardest things I've done injury-wise just because, yeah, I've had like an ankle sprain or stuff like that, but I had never had a serious injury, especially in season, which I think is the hardest part is when you're dealing with something in the middle of the season. So you don't have time to just, oh, let me take my time with rehab and like I have time to get back. Like everything with my recovery and my rehab was not shortened, but obviously at a much faster pace because I wanted to get back out on the court as soon as possible. So it was definitely one of the hardest things I've done, especially with it being knees. I know like knees are very, very tricky, and I was so lucky with what I did do, that it wasn't like I wasn't out for the season, thank God. So, yeah, I mean the rehab. I think we started the day after I did it. We were starting rehab, and my trainer did such a good job just helping me get back out on the court. We were rehabbing, I would say, for like at least 2, 3 hours a day, um, and just I think I had maybe one, like, no days off. The only days I had off were maybe game days when, like, my trainer didn't have time to do rehab with me, and even then, like, most of the time she found time to help me with, like, my like, bending my knee or stuff like that, so it was definitely the hardest thing I've done, and I would say I did learn a lot. Not that I didn't have respect for knee injuries back then, but it's definitely given me a sense of how much um, the girls that do have knee injuries go through, and it's just put stuff into perspective, like how much they really do overcome and the time and dedication it takes to come back from an injury like that. So it's definitely just put things into perspective, and obviously getting to watch the team from on the bench, like I got to learn things like that too. So I don't know, it definitely made me appreciate everything a lot more.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can imagine. What was in terms of when you got back? When did you first start to feel like, okay, like I'm really back to being myself? Because I have a
Yeah.
game in mind, but I'm interested to see what you think.
That's hard because I feel like there were a couple games where I thought I was back, but then, like, I don't think I really was until, like, later, so I'll probably say I think like, the first game I came back against UNC, I thought I was back, and I thought, like obviously, I didn't think I was gonna be, like, 100%, but I was
Yeah.
like, "I'm good, like, I'll be good," and I think the adrenaline from just it being my first game back definitely helped me that game because I feel like I did pretty well that game, and then I kinda dropped off, like, the next couple of games because obviously the adrenaline wasn't there because it wasn't my first game back, and then I think, like, against UVA, I kind of found my stride a little bit, but then I think I fell off again, and it wasn't I'm trying to think of, like, the game where I was like, "Yeah, I definitely feel like myself completely."
To me, it was the Duke game. I'll be interested if you feel the same, but I felt
Mhm.
like it was the Duke game for me when you kind of hit your stride, and from there, obviously,
That
like you mentioned, I think the hard part is it's so day to day. You just kind of never know how it's going to feel because same as you, like I mean, especially I would say too, like once you got out of the brace, you were like fully back
yeah.
to who you were. But like
That's yeah,
I
and
think
that's the
people,
tricky
yeah,
part too, cause like, I was in the brace and then I put it back on like, there was a couple games where, like, I was like, "Okay, I'm done with this, I don't need it," took it off, and then, like, didn't hurt it again, but had some issues with, like, scar tissue, so then I was like, "Alright, let me put it back on," and then I was like, "No, cannot be playing with this," so then I took it back off, and I think it was once I, like, consistently took it off and felt great, and I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'm done with that thing, I'm never putting it back on again, hopefully," like and that's when I felt definitely pretty good. I think the Duke game I think it's interesting you say that because the Duke game, did I have it on? I don't even remember if
I
I
think
had it
you
on.
did have it on
I
still. Let
think
me.
I did have
I
it
know I
on.
have the clips pulled up here,
Yeah, I think
but
that's the game after, like, I had taken it off and then had problems with scar tissue and then put it back on for that Duke game, and I think it was after the Duke game I took it off, and I think that's ki it was, like, Duke game and on, I think I felt so low-key, yeah, I think you're right, a little
yeah.
bit.
Hey, I
Yeah.
mean, I have been watching all the games back, so I'd like to think that I know something. But yeah, it's the hard part. Like you're saying, like I think people just like automatically think like, okay, knee brace, like you're back to normal. But it's so hard to play in that fucking thing. Like
Yeah.
because especially for a player like you, I feel like to me, and we're gonna get into it, but like what you can do like cutting and laterally and opening yourself up that way is what really sets you apart. So then
Mhm.
when you have to put this like it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's like, 5 pounds of metal and
Mhm.
bullshit on your leg. It's like, oh, this is like not as easy as it was before. And it's
No,
just
definitely not,
having to
and
kind of
it's
like
also,
play with a
like
different body part.
yeah, and, like, the mental aspect of it, I think, really hurt me playing-wise just because like you said, I'm used to slashing, driving, like, kinda just doing everything or whatever, but with the brace on, I felt like I kind of just became like a three-point shooter and that was it because I didn't want to really, like, be crashing and driving and going, like, contact like, all that stuff. I feel like it was like a mental block almost, and I feel like that was the biggest challenge, like, getting rid of that mental block and just finally playing like me again because for a second, I was just, "I'm just gonna shoot threes and chill on
Yeah.
the outside," but yeah.
Understandable. That's the hard part with the injuries is
Yeah,
kind of coming back from that.
for sure.
Um, I have a really fun question to ask you. I'll be interested to see if you know it. How many minutes did you sit in March on the bench?
In March.
Ashton laughed when I asked her about this, but yeah, do you know?
Uh,
Just throw out a number. It's your guess.
I don't know. I don't know the exact number. I would say it definitely wasn't a lot because of, how many players we had. So March, that's ACC tournament, and
Yeah, so it's 7 games, ACC tournament into the NCAA tournament.
um, I would say 5. I'll do 5.
Ooh, you oversold a little bit. 6 minutes. So you sat a total
Right?
of 6 minutes during March. 274 out of 280 possible minutes on court, which is just
Wow.
like yeah. I was, like, going back and I kept, like, looking at all the box scores. I'm like, "Why did he say 40 minutes? Let me add this all up." And yeah, so it's, funny the way that plays out. A pretty wild March. Just to run through some stats for those who were not part of it. Sony averaged 20.1 points per game, 6.3 rebounds, 2.7 assists, and 3.1 combined steals and blocks in 7 games in March. Pretty damn good considering you were shooting just about 50, 40, 90. Um, Especially when you look at that stretch too that you guys put together, but also as an individual, what did you think was maybe most key for you and kind of again like finding like you mentioned that getting back to what your game is mentally, and also I would add kind of unlocking some other aspects of it.
Mhm. I mean, I think during that stretch, especially when Kylie went down, obviously, I think before that we were really getting into our groove and just finally working as a team. Like we knew what each person had to do, and everyone had their role, knew what they were good at, what they were supposed to be like, not what they were supposed to be doing, but what was expected of them.
Hmm.
And I think we just finally started to figure that out. And I think for me personally, I think that was like realizing I need to be aggressive, I need to be looking to score because I know I can be a little bit passive sometimes, and that's one of the biggest things my coaches get on me for. Um, so I think that was me realizing it. I think Maddie, we kind of went through the same thing where like we had a talk. I think before I forget exactly when it was, but I was like, Maddie, like we need to step it up, me and you, first of all, like both of us have to be aggressive, and if you ever see me not being aggressive or just being passive, like, you better get on my ass about it, and I'm gonna do the same thing if I see you doing it just because we know how good we can be, so there's like, that's probably one of the most frustrating things is, like, seeing someone with so much talent being passive when you know they could do more, so that's the conversation that we had, and I think from there, it kinda just took off because we each knew our role, and I know I was looking to be more aggressive, and I know that that helps my team not being passive, so I think that was really what was happening towards the end of the season, and I think we were just clicking, like, we kinda found our chemistry, and, I mean, the momentum from the ACC tournament definitely helped us, so
Yeah. No, it's really interesting the way you put it too, because I think part of what was so fun in watching you is like exactly what you're saying. I think so much of your game is like you can play on and off the ball. You can find pockets to be aggressive, but I think you like really found more ways to even be
Mhm,
aggressive in that spurt. And I think that's part of what's really exciting about you as a potential pro. Like, there's a lot that you can keep adding to your game and improving on. I think like especially this last year, you really grew as somebody who can create out of the 2 man game. Like like even if just looking at synergy stats, like your
mhm,
where you were ranked in terms of being a pick and roll ball handler jumped a ton this past year. Obviously got even more responsibility with that, but um, I think now we can dive into some plays because I'm excited about it. I'm ready to.
yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'll get it sharing, and so if you like, we'll run through a play at first. If you have anything to add, just add it. I'll definitely I have notes on everything, so I have plenty of stuff to think of. But I want to hear what you're thinking, what you're seeing when we talk through everything. And I can
Perfect.
if you need me to, I can also run it back. Get the share
I'm
going.
excited to see what clips you chose.
I was kind. Don't worry. Not that there are really any bad clips for you, but before we dive into the film, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor for this video and series, State Champs. State Champs is a community-based streetwear brand with a brick-and-mortar sports coffee shop located in Kent, Ohio. Check out the link down below for a t-shirt collab we did, their catalog of apparel and accessories, and stop on by in person to catch a game and a cup of coffee as the WNBA postseason unfolds this fall. So I did it actually. I did all the clips from the Duke game forward because I felt like that's like we talked about. I think that's when you really hit your stride.
Mhm.
So first one. I believe, yeah, this is off an offensive board. So it's just like straight off into the two-man game, toss it back to Maddie, slide. So I really wanted to pull this one because again, I think we're talking a lot about what you can do out of the two-player game. And again, especially like I think you learn the most about a player sometimes when a play breaks down. And when you have a play like this where it's like, okay, I need to create something. They were really aggressive trying to keep the ball out of Hannah's hands early on here. So it's okay, quick draw to get the under. One of the things I wanted to ask you about with your pull up three in general, like I think you were really aggressive in drives this year, but there were also some ways where like maybe you could have taken even more threes from behind screens. Is that something that you've kind of thought about this summer and want to focus on
Mhm.
more, or what is what are you kind of feeling with that?
Yeah, definitely something I wanna add to my game. Not that I don't have it, but definitely wanna, do it more,
Hmm.
especially during this game. I remember Duke was switching 1 through 4, and a lot of times look, I think even 1 through 5 sometimes, but they were
Yeah.
just switching the screens a lot, and it was messing me up completely just because I don't know, like, when they just flat out switch, you kinda have to create your like, just you have to know what to do, and I was kind of freezing a little bit, and I remember that happened a couple screens before this one, earlier on in the quarter, and I remember Coach Mike was like, "They're literally dropping like, you have so much room to shoot it, but I'm just overthinking everything." So, I remember after this play specifically, like you said, it was like a late game not late game, late shot clock scenario, and it's taken, like, I think 3 years for me to be comfortable with just, like, if telling, like, the point guard, like, "I got it," like, "Go to the corner," not just handing it off and running to the corner myself, and I knew that the girl if Nat set the screen, the Duke girl was gonna be completely off. So instead of just overthinking, doing anything, I was just like, "I have room to shoot it, and I'm gonna shoot it." Like, there was too much room not to shoot it, so and I think I shoot it best when I'm not overthinking, and I knew I was gonna do that, so I'm
Yeah,
not failing
obviously
it.
worked out pretty well. Yeah, no, I agree, and I do want to add too, before we even get into it more. What is the difficulty in playing Duke? Because I think, like again, a lot of people will like watch Duke, like, oh, well, the score's so low and this and that. I'm like,
Mhm.
I just don't think people realize how hard that team is to play against. Both their posts, like 6'6", can really, they're pretty mobile, could block shots. They can, like you mentioned, they can switch everybody. They're long. What is kind of the difficulty in playing that, especially when you guys like, a lot of what you do is kind of playing outside in to get to the inside?
Yeah, well, Duke, first of all, is a great team. I mean, I think the thing with them is they just have an all-around team, like, every single player can can do something, can do what they do, so you kinda have to watch out for everybody, but I think it's more on the defensive side and how they really impact the defensive side of the game, and that's why it's always such a low-scoring game when you play them. And they're just I don't think there's ever a play where they're not pressuring or they try and make you feel uncomfortable. And I feel like every time we play them, it takes us like a little to be like, okay, let's relax one. And they're trying to make us uncomfortable and they do a good job at it. And it takes us a while to just be like, all right, just play our game. Like there's ways to beat it almost. Like you have to kind of exploit them trying to pressure us. And so yeah, I think it's just their defensive presence. And like you said, they have like 2 6'6" girls in the paint. They have quick, fast guards on the outside pressuring you. So it's kind of like, golly, just a lot
Yeah.
to handle.
Well, exactly too. A lot of what you guys do as well is like you'll run a ton of like screening actions on the inside to open stuff on the outside. And I think like
Mhm.
again, like if people aren't used to watching that, you don't recognize that's why space isn't open because
Yeah.
so much of what you guys do is like, okay, well, we do three different things that end up with me getting a flare screen on the backside. And like if none of those screens hit or they're just able to switch and flatten everything out, then
Mhm.
what are we really getting out of it? So it's hard to, obviously it takes time to kind of adapt to that and get into it.
Yeah.
But
Very
um,
hard.
yeah. So this is part like we talked about a little bit with your knee. Part of what I think really sets you apart is, being 6'1" and being able to get around screens like this like most people who have your length and size cannot get around screens that tightly and fluidly. And then obviously like you can pop and stop like pretty much the best in the country with that. Um, what do you think that there's anything that like kind of made you become a better off-screen player, or what do you feel is like the biggest thing to being somebody who can use screens without the ball as well as you do?
Yeah, honestly, I just think you have to be I feel like it's kind of mental, and I think it's taken me a while to actually, like, learn how to read screens, learn how to read your defender. Because certainly in high school, I was not doing that. I don't think I really was freshman year either. I think it's just something you grow and you learn the game more, and I think I've just gotten smarter as a player, and it's all about reading your defender. Like, if someone is setting you a screen, there's gonna be something open, like, something has to give, you know? So, if the defender's chasing, obviously, you're gonna curl it. If they shoot under, you're gonna flare it. Like, there's always something to do. I think it's just about making the right decision and reading your defender right. So, like, this play, I knew she was chasing me, so I went to curl, but Kennedy Brown, I think that's her name,
Yeah.
uh, she helped, so I'm not gonna curl right into a 6'6" girl, obviously, so I was like, "Alright, I can't drive into her, but I know that my defender is chasing," so I figured if I just go out to the corner, she's gonna be right there, so just curl it and I might be able to get something, and then they had, like, some miscommunication with the screen, which is what I wanted, so it worked out.
Yeah, no, so much of like making those reads is seeing, okay, the second there is miscommunication, can we take
Mhm.
advantage of it? And yeah, exactly what you do there. I'm gonna skip this play really quick and go to the next play because it plays off of what we're talking about. Again, when we talk about like so much of what you guys do on the interior is like setting screens, rub screens, like what you guys do in terms of like Iverson to get you into a ball screen is like one of the plays you guys go to most often.
Mhm.
Right here, obviously, they have you top locked. So, what are
Yep.
you reading here in terms of like, okay, I'm not going to go over, I'm going to go underneath it, try and take that?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's a there's like a fine line between taking what the defender gives you, but also not letting them what am I trying to say? Like,
Like, dictate you where you're
yeah,
going to go.
exactly.
Yeah.
Not letting them dictate you, but also taking what they give you. So I'm not gonna try and fight the girl to go over when I can just go under and do the same thing. And I think Kylie kind of moved the screen over so I could go under, even though I'm technically supposed to be going over.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's just I mean, yeah, I don't feel like fighting with a top block because I might get a foul call. Like it's just I think it's
Yeah.
just the easiest like the goal is to get open. So as long as I'm getting the ball in like right there, free throw line extended, then that's I'm just gonna use the screen how I can.
Absolutely. And then the reason I pull this play too is like, again, when you're looking at this entire mess in the paint, like Duke
Mhm.
does, and wanting to let the offense develop. How do you kind of find the balance a little bit of letting an offense develop, but also like finding angles, finding ways to be
Yeah.
aggressive? This ends up with they end up fouling Hannah when
Mhm.
you end up skipping the ball, but like
Ooh, that
you know,
was a little dangerous.
yeah, a little bit, yeah. But like when you're like seeing stuff like this, how do you because again, like obviously you want to be aggressive, but also you
Mm,
don't want to try and force that to Maddie because that's like really easy for them to come back over.
yeah.
There's just like, it's a mucky situation for sure.
Yeah, I feel like I'm answering the same thing every time, but it's just like it's taken time for me to learn to make the right decision. Um, because I feel like my freshman year, I would have tried to force that into Maddie because we try to obviously feed our bigs and get it inside. Um, but I feel like it is hard to know when to let the play keep going, when to try and create your own shot, but you don't want to obviously like blow up the play trying to, like it has to be like smart and within the offense it has to be a good shot. But I think it's just time, honestly, and experience. Like I would hope I know now not to make that pass when she's being fronted and Kennedy Brown is behind her. Like that's just not gonna put her in a good situation and it might be a turnover. Like I just know um when a good pass is a good pass and I'm not gonna put Maddie in a situation where she's gonna be doubled or just like she can't really do anything there. But any other time, obviously, I'm gonna give Maddie the ball on the block, like, that's almost a guaranteed 2 points, but
Yeah. No,
not
absolutely.
that one.
Well, yeah, no. Well, now we'll back up because this one, like, just in terms of talking about playmaking as a whole, I think this really showcases your vision. Like, I would say you're somebody who's a better passer than your assists maybe indicate. Like, obviously, you can rack up assists per game, but like, particularly here, like when you're looking at playmaking, to me, it's I look for quickness, like obviously ball placement, but like how quickly you're noticing and seeing things, and like I think your playmaking really shines in transition. Like obviously this is well placed, it's on the money, and it happens really quickly, which is why it ends up being free throws.
Mhm.
Um, Especially like playing with somebody. I mean, I would argue Hannah was maybe the fastest player in the country this year, at least the
Oh, yeah,
ACC.
for
Um,
sure.
how much time did it take to kind of get used to that and finding those outlets?
Um, I would say not too long. I mean, someone like Hannah is easy to play with when she's so talented. Especially with just how athletic and fast she is. Like I knew there's just certain times I know like if I pass, she's gonna get it. Like if I pass this ball, like I'll take her versus anybody any day, especially in an open court. Like no one is catching her. So especially in this situation, like Hannah one on one versus I forget her name, but
I think
against
it's
the 2
Reagan
girl.
Richardson. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Richardson, like and Richardson is so athletic, which says something too because it just credits Hannah's speed, like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just knew, like, one-on-one, I'm gonna take Hannah. So if I can get the ball in a spot, like, with an open court, she's gonna get that. So it was just about, like, the pass leading her and not having it be behind her, and yeah.
Works out for sure. But again, like we're talking about too, I think like two dribbles and you know where the ball is going. I think again, like that's the quickness pace. That's where the game is. That's where it's going. That's what you want to see more of. So it's a great read. I want to talk now about the defensive end because to me, like again, I don't know how you feel. To me, this game for you against Virginia Tech was like the game for you. Obviously, for you guys as a team, it felt like the one that really set the
Mhm.
season apart in terms of taking that next step. Um, but we're gonna run through a couple clips of you defending Georgia A more because this is really
God.
fun.
It's not fun defending her.
No, it's not because I think the yeah I think my biggest note I have in here is defending multiple actions and movements. And yeah, you so it's like first starts off with the ball, goes to could be setting a screen,
Mhm.
and then obviously like really good contest on the drive too. Um, yeah, exactly what you're talking about in terms of how hard it is to guard her. Obviously everybody is their own player, but it's like the Steph Curry idea of like you have to guard somebody at
Always be
all
moving.
times,
Yeah.
and especially with Georgia, she's so fast.
Mhm.
Like you talk about Hannah, but I think she's almost like a different kind of fast. Like the way she moves without the ball is like that's just so different.
Mhm.
When you're preparing for that, obviously you guys had your own scout and game plan. It was a lot less zone in this game, at least later on. What how do you kind of prepare yourself knowing like, this is a player I might have to fight through 5 or 6 screens in one possession?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my past 3 years, I've come to know Georgia Amore's game,
Mhm.
so, that definitely helps, and just going in like, credit to Coach Mike, I think it was her scout, but she really prepped us on, like I knew exactly what was gonna happen, I knew what to expect, and yeah, just expecting to always be moving on defense, like, there was not one time can I look away, not one time can I relax or get a break, because I know that if Georgia is she's always gonna set a screen to get a screen. So, like, there's just no relaxing. So knowing that beforehand definitely helps. And I think obviously my height helps me a little bit when defending her. But yeah, she's definitely I every single time we play Virginia Tech and I have to guard her, I'm exhausted. Like I'm
Yeah.
never more exhausted than when I have to guard her. It's incredible because Virginia Tech's offense is also just screen after screen after screen, so I have to, like, bump like, in this play, I was supposed to bump Kitley, but she and Kylie ended up taking another route, So, like, so I'm supposed to bump Kitley, but
Mhm.
Kylie went that way, so I didn't have to, but usually I'll have to bump her to then chase Georgia, but Georgia can shoot a 3 in a split second, so I don't have time, and it's
Yeah,
just
no, that's such a hard part with the bump too, because it's
um,
like, alright, well, if
yeah, you don't wanna get stuck because then
exactly, because
Georgia's
then
gonna get an open 3, and then it's
yeah.
gonna be on me,
Yeah,
it's
especially, like I mean, you're such a good help defender too, so, like, when you have to be so locked in to defending somebody like
Mhm,
this obviously, I know you guys change up your principles a little bit for that, but, like, how does that kinda impact, like, making sure like, obviously, you don't wanna get caught napping off the ball, but, like, you're
yeah,
so locked into, like, "I can't let this player get open." How does that kind of,
mhm.
like how do you still work to maybe try and make an impact off the ball, but also being, engaged with that?
Yeah, I mean, help defense is definitely something that I focus on in a normal game, but I think when I'm defending people like Georgia, that's like in the back of my
Yeah,
mind because our team is always gonna rather like we'd rather someone else score than Georgia or like Kaylee, for example. Like we do not we'll take someone else beating us over Georgia. But yeah, so help defense is not really on my mind at all, actually.
yeah,
I mean, if like playing Virginia Tech, if I were to guard like Kayla King or even her, you can't even help off of her. But like if I'm guarding Georgia, my role and the only thing on my mind is not letting her score. I'm not really worried about helping or
yeah.
really.
No, for sure. And you mentioned your size being an advantage too. I think it's interesting you say that because, like, yes, I think like when you get here, for sure. And one of the things that I think you're really good at doing is using your length and your size when you're getting, walling somebody off to the rim into help. Like, I think you're really good at that, especially like you can see that this year, Maddie does a good job coming over just to provide a presence too.
Mhm.
But like, you don't foul, you just make it hard. And to me, like, that was the most important thing against Georgia this year. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, you don't wanna foul her, but, like, it's almost better to let her get to the rim in some ways and just be there with your arms up because
Yeah,
then
that was our game plan because 'cause we'd
yeah,
rather Georgia be driving into me and Maddie than her get a pull-up or a 3.
yeah,
Like, we'd rather her try and finish over, like, my arms and Maddie's than her getting a pull-up, so that drive, we would take any day in this
yeah,
game, so
absolutely. But again, like, there just aren't a lot of players your size that are able to stay skinny around screens and, like, be on top of somebody like that without fouling, so, again, like, I think that's why this game stands out so much to me because being able to guard Georgia as well as you did was pretty big time. Which clip is this? Oh yeah, okay. Speaking on what you just said, you probably won't like. I wanted to pull this clip because to me, wait, is this the right one? I think this is the right one. Let me. We'll let it develop. Yeah.
mm,
So obviously Georgia ends up hitting the pull of three here, but exactly like you talked about, like I think this one's tough because to me at least, and I'll be interested to see what you say, but like defense is just never perfect. Like, it is
oh,
legitimately
yeah,
impossible to pitch a no hitter in defense. And to me, like, this is about as good as you can do because Georgia Amore and Liz Kitley were both All American level players, both very good.
yeah,
Um, this is just a great step up screen from Liz Kitley. And like, if you try and fight through that, you're probably getting a defensive foul. Like obviously you don't want to give anything up on the roll, so you do a great job hugging this down and like not letting Liz get open.
mm,
Obviously you don't want to give up the pull up three to Georgia, but like I think in this scenario, the way that kind of plays out, there's not really a whole ton else you can do, or kind of where do you feel on this one?
yeah, honestly, I think I saw this clip when we were watching film.
Hmm.
And I think after this, I had gotten mad at myself because I just can't run into a screen like that.
Hmm.
Like I either have to get over or under, but that's something that like just running straight into a screen like that is not really acceptable. Obviously, everyone makes mistakes. And I think it was actually after this play where I was like, all right, no matter what, I know like I should have known that she was getting a second screen because that's how their offense is. So, like, right after the first screen before this one, I dropped. So, like, I dropped right into the screen instead of
Hmm.
just staying up on her.
Yeah,
If I had stayed up, like, attached to her hip, I would have been able to get over that and not make Nat try and contest it. But that switch is something we don't want. Like, I don't
yeah,
wanna be on Kitley, obviously, and Nat does not wanna be stuck on Georgia. So I remember, like, we got yelled at for that because
Yeah,
obviously, Georgia Amor 3 is you try not to let her shoot it, obviously, but yeah, I think Nat got yelled at for not having her hand up, but I took it like, that was definitely my fault. And I
mhm,
think after that, I was like, "Alright, I'm not running into any more screens, like, I'm gonna stay as attached to Georgia as I can." Obviously, that's harder than it sounds, but, like, as attached to that I can at least get over and contest it. Like,
yeah,
a rear view contest for a 3 is pretty hard to make, so I was like, "I can't put Nat in that situation."
yeah.
So,
I love you pointing out, like, the dropping down a little bit after the first screen. Like, I think that's again, that's part of the difficulty of, like, defending so many freaking things because,
mm,
like, being up on somebody like that for an entire game is just that's a lot of energy, especially when you have to do stuff on the offensive end as
yeah.
well. So that makes the next couple possessions, we're almost to my favorite possession of the year. This is a very good one, obviously. You mentioned obviously not wanting to get caught over screens. You ride out the drive again, which is really good.
Yeah. Yeah, again, that's what we wanted, and this is 4th quarter, yeah. 4th
Mhm.
quarter, I probably still made mistakes, obviously, but I
Pretty
really
locked in,
put
yeah.
emphasis on, like, just getting over it and trying to not let, but have her drive instead of pulling up or shooting a 3.
Mhm. This to me, so I think this is at least again for me as somebody who is like really focused on player development in the draft. This is my favorite possession you had on either side of the ball the entire year. Um, Guarding Georgia 94 feet over first screen, contain, can't obviously again can't fall asleep because she's gonna go set a screen to get a screen. Get skinny, stick over top, and then again, like you said, rear contest. That's a really tough pull up too. Like
Yeah.
that's about as hard as you can make a shot. Again, to me, like this is like you talked about being locked in and not getting hit by screens like that. Um, yeah, that's just an awesome possession.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Um, thanks for doing good things on film. Um, this one too, I wanted to go into this one for just a second, because you guys did not typically ice a ton this year, but you guys did in the Oregon State game. And again, when you talk about the rear contest stuff, like so much of defense is like being able to work in tandem. And again, this is just great stuff between you and Nat to contain an empty side ball screen,
Yeah.
force
That
turnover.
was credit to Nat on that because she did a great job at helping me, but then getting back and then Maddie realizing, like, that split second helping Nat get back and then being able to intercept that, like, that was just I mean, honestly, Nat and Maddie did most of it, like, that Nat helped me on that, so
Yeah. I will say though, Reagan Beers is like one of the toughest screeners in the country. So there's like no shame in taking that one on the chin a little bit. But again, like the recovery, it's all about the recovery, being able to fight back in, get in front. Like you're never going to fully stop something on the perimeter. It's always like, how do we kind of contain it as a team? And
Yeah.
it's good work. So now we're getting back into the offense a little bit. And this is one of the, some of the stuff I want to talk about a little bit with you as a ball handler. Like I feel like, especially towards the back end of the season, like you mentioned, with getting more aggressive, I thought you
Mhm.
did really good work with starting to keep your dribble alive more. Um, and like I think some people will like see somebody crab dribble and they're like, ah, no, I don't want to see that. But like I thought you did a really good job of using that down the stretch of the season when you were guarded by point guards. Like
Yeah.
you have the size, it's good for using angles, and it just kind of helps with creating stuff.
Yeah, I've made the mistake of trying to call plays while also, um like, try and keep my dribble against a point guard guarding me, calling plays and trying to direct people and, like, losing it because of that.
Hmm.
So, I try obviously, against a smaller guard, I feel more comfortable with my back to them because they're so much lower to the floor and, like,
Hmm.
can intercept my dribble or, whatnot, but, um, just especially when I'm calling a play, like, there's get them on my back so I don't have to worry about it, and then once I'm getting ready to do something, then, like, I can create my own space and, face up, but I've definitely made that mistake too many times, just trying to, like, call something and then they, like, steal it, or I make a dumb pass because I'm feeling pressured, so just learning to like, handle the pressure, put them on my back, like, don't have to worry, now I can,
Mhm.
but just trying
Um,
to use that more for sure.
yeah, and, like, especially here too, like, one of the things that again, like, I feel like when you talk about the aggression, like, you did a lot of, "Okay, there's a screen coming, but I'm gonna go first, see if I can
Mhm.
create something," and then you turn back into it, and then you're able to kind of force the switch, and that, ends up creating stuff with Maddie getting open. The ball doesn't go down, but I think it's a good process, like,
Yeah.
especially with the turnbacks. I feel like that's something you do a lot out of ball screens, like, kinda this, like, quick switch back like this. Um what like where do you kind of feel like that came from? Because I know like sometimes people just like dribble back out, but you cut down the path a little bit by doing
Mhm.
more stuff like this.
Yeah, I honestly have no idea where that comes from. I feel like I probably just started doing it and I felt comfortable, or I felt like I guess it worked, but I really have no clue.
Yeah. Well, it works. Just a couple more clips to run through. Um, so they're playing. They start off. It's like
Um,
it technically isn't a zone because they just like kind of matched up and we're just like
yeah,
a
it's
little
like a
bit odd with
matchup
this.
2-3
Yeah,
kinda.
and but also like a little bit of. I mean, it's just you get open space, so it's a drop.
Mhm.
Um, What are all you reading here? Because I feel like to me, like you watch this and you're like, okay, Kylie, are you gonna roll? Like, are you gonna get anything off the roll? Obviously, she gets hung up by Georgia there,
Yeah.
pop wide open midi. Um, Again, like when you talk about like some of the early offense stuff and being able to create from there, what is like the sort of leeway and like feeling out process for that? Because again, like
Yeah.
obviously there are plays and you want to let the offense develop, but also like you have an open shot, you want to take it.
Mhm. I think as guards, I mean, honestly, as players playing under Coach Ivy, I think we get a lot of leeway with that because she's never going to be one to make us play like robots and like, you have to pass it here, you have to do this. Like, obviously, there's a rhyme and a reason, and there's certain times we want to follow the play.
Hmm.
But in like the course of a game, I think we have freedom to do what we feel is best as long as it's something that's smart and it's a good shot. So Coach Ivy is never going to yell at us for being aggressive in this instance, especially if it's something that like this play is for a pull up, or like technically I'm supposed to go right. Obviously Kylie's setting that screen. But Georgia was icing it. So I just in this instance took what she gave me because the middle was wide open. um, but yeah, Coach Ivy is never gonna yell at us for being aggressive and taking a good shot that, like, I'm gonna make most times,
Yeah.
so
All right, next play. Yeah, this one I like this one a lot because again, looking at the back end of the year, I feel like you started to show more with like pacing as a ball handler, so not just straight line drives, but like okay, I can work a little bit, in terms of like mixing up speed. So obviously you get the screen, pull it
Mhm.
out to the side a little bit, hezzy, and then up into your finish. And obviously you're a very good finisher, but like I think to me it's the hezzy here that kind of sets things up into the
Yeah.
screen and then off.
Yeah, I think I've just realized how effective changing your pace is because the defender never knows what you're gonna do. And that's something my dad has literally told me since I think I was like 6 years old. Like, change of pace is so, so good. And I think I'm just realizing that more. And yeah, I especially remember with Louisville, like I was so determined to be more aggressive off the ball screen because the game that we played earlier at Louisville, they're like them they switched most screens, and it just completely took me out of the game. Like, I was so unaggressive, passive, would just pass it off a screen because I was like, "Oh, man, I guess, like, the Louisville girls is in front of me, so let me just pass it," and I remember, like, before that game, Coach Mike was like, purposely like, literally showed me every single ball screen that I did, in the Louisville game before, and she was like, "This is what you're not gonna do.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna be aggressive, you're gonna make them guard you, you're gonna drive, you're gonna do just make them guard you and then pass it," but that was, like, a very big emphasis that game, and yeah, so that game I was definitely way more aggressive off the ball screen and wanted to make, like, if they were gonna switch, I was gonna try and make them, like, regret that switch, so
Yeah. I know you laid out a little bit of it, but what do you think is kind of like the key to beating a switch? Because again, like I think it's a lot easier said than done, and like you mentioned, I think the
Mm,
mental part of like, okay, still kind of working through that and being able to is it's easier said than done. So what do you think
yeah.
is maybe most important for that?
Um, well, I think for me at least, I have trouble when like, a lot of times when a team is switching, it's because they can. So, like, the 4 guard or the 5 guard that they're switching with is capable of guarding a guard, like, they're mobile or, like, for example, Duke, they switch with, JD, I
Hmm.
think that's her name, and she's almost like a guard. So, it's like, you almost don't know what not what you have, but what's open because it's almost like, "Okay, like, I need to take this girl one-on-one if I wanna get my own shot, which is something that's, like, a little tricky within an offense, kind of.
Hmm.
Whereas, like, if it's a regular pick and roll, you can like, if they switch, then you have the mismatch. If they don't, then you have the pull-up. Like, it's very more like, just you kind of have, like, a system, kind of, like, you
Yeah.
know what you're supposed to do at least, but for a switch, I think what I've felt works the best is just being aggressive. Like, if they do switch there's gonna be some kind of mismatch if they're switching a post for whoever's guarding me. Like, if a girl that's guarding me is guarding Maddie, I'm gonna say that's a mismatch. So, like, as long as you're aggressive and if you don't get a shot, like, I think it just opens up people. Like, it opens up the court, it frees up people. So, I think that's what I found, works the best because I think what teams want you to do when they switch is pass it out or do something else. So,
Yeah. No, and especially too, I think one of the things that you're really good at is like you're if you don't have something, you're good at getting off the ball and moving. Like
yeah.
and it takes a lot some players in the pros still haven't figured that out yet. Like it
Mhm.
takes time to kind of see that. I think part of what's really fun for you is like you're almost the inverse where it's like, okay, learning when to stay on the ball and how to take
Mhm.
advantage of things, which is like I don't know, it's interesting because I feel like most players don't really have that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a reverse psychology in some ways, but
For
it's a
sure.
benefit for you for sure. So just like two more that I want to run through really quick because I just realized I put way too many clips on. This one I liked a lot because you started doing a lot more with rejecting screens at the end of the year, and I liked it a lot because again, like you have Nat coming up to set a screen, you go early like we talked about, and then let the screen develop again. So work Hayes back into the screen, get that wide open shot. Like River Baldwin's a good defender, but she's always going to be in a drop. So it's like, okay,
Mhm.
cool, wide open, got that midi. Um, when you're like again, like finding how you want to attack with like rejects and doing anything in terms of like you talk about being aggressive, what are you looking for? Like what's maybe the first thing you're kind of pointing out? Are you looking at footwork? Are you looking at knees? What are you trying to see
Yeah.
that says, okay, I want to go right here?
I think I'm looking at her body. I think NC State is another great defensive team that really disrupts what you're trying to do. And if I think I they were either icing or like jumping the screen almost.
Hmm.
And I feel like I remember she kept jumping the screen and making me not use it. So I think I don't know if this was right. I mean, it ended up working out, but I didn't even let Nat set up in a way,
Hmm.
which I guess could be taken like I think I did go too early, but again, it ended up working because I she did a great job at just resetting it.
Yeah,
So
no, I don't
I was
even
able to
mean
go
that
to
you
my lefts,
yeah.
but
No, I don't even mean that you
yeah.
go too early here. I think like you're talking about, like NC State was really aggressive in trying to kind of
Mhm.
force you guys out of using your screens.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's like I like this because it's all right, force
Just
something up, get you
yeah,
out of position, and then be able to set up the screen. Because again,
yeah.
like it's not as simple as just saying we have spread pick and roll, cool. Like
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
what you got to be able to set things up to make the defense work.
Yeah, I feel like I was just trying to make her not be so ready to guard the
Hmm.
screen, like, if I'm just sitting with the ball and then Nat comes, like, obviously she knows what's about to happen, so I feel like I was just trying to like, once you're moving, it's hard to get ready, like, perfectly ready to get over or under a screen, like, now she's kind of in a position where she dropped back and now she's gonna get hit by the screen, kind of.
Hmm. No, absolutely. Okay, last play. Um, This is one of my favorite passes from you this year. Again, like it's early on in the game, but getting to the rim and then just creating to the corner. Obviously, unfortunate fall. I missed that the first time. Um, but I think that there's again more for you kind of creating out of ball screens like this and getting the ball kind of pinging around. Um, especially with when you have shooters out there like Anna.
Mhm.
What are you kind of feeling in this play? What are what do you see in this play that you like?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I was so happy that this play worked out because I think, like, we had worked on this so much in the practices leading up to,
mhm,
playing Duke because I forget exactly what it was, but Coach Mike said, like, the pass to the corner is gonna be open. Like, it's probably not gonna be the post, like, cutting, it's probably not gonna be you're probably not gonna be able to just drive it and get a layup, and she had, like we literally practiced this so much, just driving for a layup, kicking it to the corner, um, and so it was probably in my mind because we were, like, talking about it so much, and then the first play, obviously, I didn't have much because Kennedy Brown is on me, and I saw AD open because Duke likes to help, um, and I mean, I couldn't even really see the shot because I was in with the reporters, but
mhm.
I saw when I saw that she made it, I was so, so happy because, like, it's so satisfying when you're working on something for so long and then you do it in game, like, I remember this game too, I had, like, a backdoor cut when Maddie passed it to me, and that was also something that I think we work on it all year and we barely ever get it out of Princeton or Chin, I think,
Yeah.
and when we got it, like, the whole team was so happy because we, again, practiced it so much. But yeah, one of the top 2 feelings.
Yeah, it's actually really funny. That was one of the clips I cut before we
Yeah.
got on. But yeah, because I do just want to throw that out there. Like you are by the numbers, actually, you were the top cutter in the ACC this year.
How
Like
does that
so
even work? How do they
whenever out of yeah, so by points per possession. So like when you were the most efficient cutter in the ACC this year. So like whenever you got the ball with a scoring opportunity on a cut, you were the most efficient player in the ACC. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Oh,
99th percentile in Division
yeah.
1, not bad. Well, Sony, I could do this all day with you. I appreciate you making the time. I know I took you a little bit longer than I was
Yeah, no,
expecting, but,
it's
um,
been fun, so
yeah,
I lost track of time, so don't worry about that at all.
likewise. To close out too, what are you most excited about this year? Where can people find you, or is there anything that you're most excited for final year, heading into school?
Um I f I feel like kind of everything, that's such a bizarre answer, but just, like, really
Kinda soaking it in,
appreciating
yeah.
yeah, soaking everything in, getting to play with Olivia Miles again, obviously,
The
is
Olivia Miles, yeah,
very,
yeah.
very yeah, the one and only, getting to play with her, I'm very, very excited for, but just getting to play with my team again, like, I I love playing with them, I love playing basketball, I love playing basketball for Notre Dame, especially, so getting to do that one more time, like, thinking about it, it makes me, like, emotional, but, obviously, I don't wanna think about it being sad, but just make the most out of it, so I'm just excited to put the jersey on for, one last year, and I get to do it with my best friends, so
No, I love that. Obviously, everybody listening and watching, you should be excited because Notre Dame's gonna be a great team this year. Somehow college is, like, just around the corner, which I'm,
I know,
excited for, but also not ready
so
for, but,
fast. Yeah.
Sony, thank you again to everyone watching. Be sure to go subscribe down below. Enjoy the rest of your day.